How does tarot actually work? In this video, you're going to learn how tarot literally actually works, and it's not going to be what you might expect. First, I'm going to give maybe a couple paradigms of what I've seen kind of floating around, and then I'm going to give you my hot take. Take what you want, leave the rest, and let's have some fun. So one paradigm that I see is the energetic paradigm, and this is what my teacher subscribes to. And so what she would teach is that all the cards, all their archetypes, and they have energy, and that energy is going to maybe more or less reflect the energy that we are bringing into the reading. Now, she went to Barbara Brennan, and she is like the best energy healer I have ever met, and she's probably right because she's right about most things. Now, there are people, of course, that are going to believe that the cards themselves are magical or have some superpower or influence, and that's totally cool. It's not something I personally subscribe to. Then there's the kind of psychological Jungian approach that sees the tarot as an expression of archetypes that participate in our experience. The tarot is then a look into the collective unconscious or objective psychoid that was popularized and developed by the famous Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And that is totally cool, and I love that. But what else? There's also the philosophy that there is no psyche, archetype, magic, mysticism, energy. It's literally just our interpretation of the card in the moment. That's a sort of reductionist material approach where it's just our brain matter and our neurons firing and doing things that are potentially helpful for us by pulling cards. But I'm going to tell you the real reason that tarot works. And by real reason, I mean just my current favorite paradigm that you can take or leave. I'm going to take a little bit of a historical approach. When you go into the history of tarot, you will find most of its, a lot of its influences lie in the Western esoteric traditions, which themselves stem from a group of traditions which were hanging out from roughly the Hellenistic age into late antiquity. And these include Plato, Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Pythagoreanism, that's before, Gnosticism, and Kabbalah, and all the magic and fun stuff that was weaving in and out of those things. One of the common paradigms between all these traditions is that of emanation. Emanation is the flowing or expanding outward of a source, and it's sort of like the products of that expansion or that outpouring create reflections of itself or similarities, or it creates more stuff to play with in the universe. Now, Pythagoras had his whole system of numbers where he used numbers in a number of ways, but one of the ways I believe to use numbers was to show the bridge between the human experience and the divine. And of course, Plato then took that and created his idea of the world of forms, where everything, every experience, everything in the world that exists is a lower manifestation of its perfect form in a more subtle place, in a more intelligible, abstract place. Now, Plotinus took Plato's system and developed it into a beautiful tradition of mysticism that I believe influenced so much of this stuff. And he essentially put together a chain of being where he uses 4 general ideas to express the emanation of the One, which is the ultimate ground of being, the truth, the good, God, consciousness, Brahman, whatever you want to call it. Now, around his time, there were early traditions of Jewish mysticism, from Merkaba mysticism to the Hekkelot, and other traditions that were measuring God in all different types of ways and deeply anthropomorphizing God. And then Pythagoras came in and influenced that, and we get the Sefer Yetzirah, which is this essentially the blueprint of the universe, the code of the matrix that uses Hebrew letters and numbers to show how this universe came into being. And that introduces the idea of the Sephirot, the enumerations of the tree of life, the emanations of God. We see parallels in Hermeticism, we see some parallels in Gnosticism. All these things were kind of bubbling around and flowing. And then we get to the Renaissance, where everything was about the past. You know, they fetishized the past just like I am fetishizing the past right now. They were all about looking into the classics and the secrets and the perennial philosophy. And there were these translation projects of Marsilio Ficino translating the Corpus Hermeticum and Plato, and it was a fun time. And so this allowed for a lot of reconnection and reassociation between these various traditions. probably one of the more recent developments of the Western esoteric traditions was the occult revival of the late 19th century. It is through this we get spiritualism, theosophy, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and through that, Arthur Edward Waite and the Waite-Smith Tarot, and Aleister Crowley and the Thoth deck. The Golden Dawn remixed a lot of the traditions I've been speaking about, brought in some Eastern ideas, and just went crazy, had a great time. It was some semiotic masturbation of Western esotericism and a culture. And it's brilliant stuff. And so that's what most modern tarot is based off of. But what is the common thread through all of this? It's something related to bridging ourselves in our current experience with the infinite, with God, with consciousness, the ground of being, with the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And so when you really study the tarot, you start to see that each card is really an emanation of that ultimate truth, an expression, a pouring out. Literally, the symbols of the major arcana cards are symbols of how unity becomes duality, and then how that duality complicates itself into more multiplicity and diversity, and eventually becomes our current experience. And this is not unique to the West. This has been covered time and time again in so many mystical traditions of the East, but in a different way. See, India is cool because India doesn't really care what you believe, it cares what you do, whereas the West is all about caring what you believe and not caring what you do. So in India, a lot of these traditions survived and didn't have to go hiding underground. And so Vedanta is literally thousands of years old and still alive, and so cool. Anyway, if you study traditions like Vedanta and yoga and even aspects of bhakti yoga, there is this sense of, it's not emanation necessarily, but the universe comes into being through this subject and object relationship. There is a split within consciousness, or a split within Purusha and Prakriti. It depends on the system, but there's like a sort of split between the observer and the observed, and that duality starts to complicate and further identify with more complex composites of itself, and then yields the universe as we experience it. So I guess what I'm getting at is there is a sort of perennial truth, if not a perennial philosophy, at least a perennial truth. And if you study all of these mystical traditions with tarot, you will draw all the connections. So let's go back to my question, how does tarot work? Well, remember how I said reality comes into being through complicating itself, through unity splitting into duality. Each tarot card shows a movement into complication from simplicity. In the same way as every choice that you make, everything that you create in your world, you take resources, energy, stuff, ideas, bring them together, create a compound, and then you have and enjoy that you've created for yourself until that itself dissolves and you create something else. Literally, how do you manifest the job, right? You have to write a resume, which is ideas coming together onto paper. You send that to people, and then you have to bring your body to the job. You and the employer chat. You have an interview. That's more things coming together to create complexity. You sign a contract. You get on a payroll. More things coming together, and then you start the job, and then that becomes part of your life, and you work for however long you work. But even that job is a repetitive pattern of various forces, your body, your mind, your energy, your efforts, coming together with other people to create this thing. In the same way, a bunch of raw material through gravity somehow orbited the sun and became the earth. That you might have to fact check because I am no cosmologist. Even this YouTube video was created through my thoughts, a camera, my physical body, my life experiences, my research, all coming together to create a composite thing that is more complicated than the sum of its parts. When you understand this pattern, you see that this is how the universe does, makes, differentiates, and changes itself from one thing or the other, and every card is an expression of that. I teach this more in my Tarot Divination course, but if you study the major arcana cards a little more deeply, you'll see how each card moves from simplicity to complexity. The first row of majors is all about consciousness coming into duality. The second row of majors is all about that duality manipulating and complicating itself. And the last row of majors is that multiplicity finally manifesting in matter, which is really measurement, but that's a whole nother video, and how that matter realizes itself within the initial consciousness that started the whole process. This is manifestation. And it's not superstition. It's not like you just think of something and things magically appear. You have to pull in the various foods to make the smorgasbord of your life. Smorgasbord? I don't know how to say that word. And because of this, all the cards are active all the time. The tarot is actually holographic. Each card reflects the whole deck, and each symbol reflects the whole process. But that will be something you can learn if you choose to take my Mysticism for Misfits program, which teaches the tarot mysticism process amongst other very advanced tarot techniques, healing techniques, and personal development strategies that will literally change your life as they have my students. I'm really, really excited for that. It is so cool. It's a whole nother level of work. You won't even recognize tarot halfway through, and then you're gonna rebuild it and make it something you never even thought it could be. Anyway, if you're really serious about studying tarot, its mystical philosophy for personal development to help others, Tarot Mysticism Academy is where it's at. At the time of this video, there might be a window of application still open, maybe not, but I have a whole year of courses of over 8 programs that go deeply into tarot's real mystical philosophy and actually how to apply it to live a better life. I'm a living example of this. I live my fantasy right now because I have applied so much of what I've studied from so many traditions, from self-help to mysticism, meditation, energy work, and it's all in the tarot if you know where to look. The type of work I do is not just for tarot hobbyists, it's real work that makes significant changes for yourself, for your loved ones, and is my favorite thing to do. I get to hang out with mystical misfits all day and we get to heal ourselves and help heal the world. So if you're interested in that, go to tarotmysticismacademy.com and check it out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next wormhole. Much love.